Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live chat is about mental health, body image, and eating disorders. And we're also going to talk a lot about exercise as well in this conversation, which I didn't put out there in the Facebook group, but we're going to cover it because it's important and it does have to do with that body dysmorphia component. So for all of you that are attending live and listening to the replay after, hello, you all know me. I'm Dr. J. If you don't know me because you came from Kelly's community, then also hello, I'm Dr. J. We're going to get to know each other very well tonight. By the time you leave this call, you're going to know way too much about me. And there's probably people that will listen to this that have known me my whole life and didn't even know that I worked through this. So this is going to be very fun. But with nothing else left to say in that territory, I'm welcoming Kelly to my live chat tonight because there is no other person that I could think about having this conversation with except for her, because she's actually done the self-reflective work. And me and Kelly tonight are not going to come from a standpoint of like, we are healed and we are better and we know and we're going to teach. It's not that. We are going to have a tell-all and we're going to talk about the shit and what it's like to sit in it and what it's like to feel and experience this stuff so that we are walking out of this knowing that this stuff is okay to talk about. Okay. I'm going to let you run with the wind for a hot second so you can tell them who you are and what you do.
So my name is Kelly Shaw, and I am a movement artist and a dance artist that also guides and leads beautiful humans and other creatives through somatic and expressive arts therapy. I have a deep passion for helping others and guiding them in a spiritual and embodied approach to working through tiny T trauma. I'm not a therapist, but I am here today to share my own story of my own awakening and my own healing. And I believe that we learn and we relate best through story, and we feel most seen and most held when we share those vulnerable pieces and we hear that we're not alone and we know there's a way through, not a way around, but a way through. And so, yeah, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's a topic that I'm very much still in the grips of, and learning things about myself and learning how to navigate it more proficiently and more successfully every day. So, yeah, you can kind of like take the lead, Jenna.
I love it. It was so good. I might just want you to continue. We're just going to jump straight in. For those of you that know me, you know I'm not soft about that kind of stuff. So we're just going to slice it open, laser in, and we are going to talk about our personal experiences with the mental health, body image, eating disorder connection. Do you want me to pass the floor off to you to start off? I really would love, if you feel comfortable. I mean, now I'm going to put you on this damn spot. I want you to tell us about what your eating disorder or what your disordered pattern of behavior looked like at its worst. And then I will share mine and we'll just see where we go from there.
Great.
Hit me.
What's that?
I said, hit me.
Hit me. Yeah. So it's so interesting to recall and recount how things manifest and how subtle and insidious they can be. And so when in preparing for this conversation, I was like, ooh, like where did it even start? Like
Oof,
under what
yeah.
rock and like under what
Take my clothes off.
yeah. And when I look back, like as a young person, I grew up as a dancer. Obviously, I grew up as a woman. I grew up as a Caucasian woman. There were standards, there were societal norms and pressures and things. But it didn't really manifest as a controlling of my food and exercise until I was probably 18. Like I had a lot of other coping strategies
Yeah.
that were in place because I also had this naturally long and lean body for dance. And
Mm-hmm.
only until I was in university going to school for dance and beginning to pursue this as a profession. And I actually remember exactly the moment. I will share it. I was standing beside a friend of mine in the mirror, and we had very similar bodies, or what I perceived as a very similar body to her. And she was looking at herself wearing a bodysuit and tights, and she was picking her body to pieces and calling herself fat and saying, "Oh, it's okay. Like, I'll just," and she was basically strategizing on how to diet and how to restrict and how to exercise and counter. And I had never really even thought about how I could possibly control this part of my life, which feels crazy to think that it never entered my orbit before. But this was such a pivotal moment. And I remember looking at her and looking at me and being like, we look the same. So if she's doing it, I better jump on that bandwagon.
I'm terrified.
I was clearly in a place where I was susceptible to this and looking for a way to control my experience. I was away at university, we were drinking more, we were whatever. I was gaining a little bit of weight, and it was just that moment. And that is when I first started dieting, cleansing, isogenics, 4 Hour Body, all of these things, fruit fasting, all kinds of really exciting things for a couple of years in university, which all caused me to gain more weight.
Mhm.
And I was drinking a lot, so I was coupling it with a very unhealthy binge pattern with substance. And from that moment forward, it was constantly this yo-yo battle of what diet will save me from this weight I am not allowed to have.
Yeah.
Then introduced, first it was the food and the diet. And so I will answer your question a little bit more succinctly. When it was at its worst, I was counting calories incessantly on my phone, wearing a Fitbit, tracking all my foods, reporting to a couple different friends of mine that were disordered in a similar way for accountability. And
Oh, mask does accountability. We love that, don't we? Yeah.
health and wellness, and I was going to the gym probably twice a day, as well as dance class of some sort or rehearsal, even to the point where if I had had that brownie after dinner that I had like told myself I wasn't allowed to have and then finally caved and have it, I would be at the gym at 11 o'clock at night. I remember my condo, and I would be running on the treadmill for those 30 minutes to burn those 300 calories and taking selfies in the mirror for more accountability to my friends. And it brings up like a very visceral,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
very uncomfortable, like shame for me, and also just a whole lot of sadness for that part of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I practiced that behavior, which is like borderline orthorexia, borderline like binging and coping and numbing
Let's
with
take the
food.
word borderline out of there and just call it for what it is.
I know people have different definitions of things, but and it's hard to just like give perfect language to whatever.
Yeah.
It was
I will go through some of the language after so that people are
That's
understanding everything we talk about. It's funny because you talk about like rock bottom, and we're still, even we talk about rock bottom and we're still stuck in the acts of what we're happening. We never talk about like you just the first thing you touched on, you're like shame. Like the first thing I think of when I think about rock bottom for me is like sheer animalistic disgust. Like disgust in like who I was, how I thought, how I looked at myself, why I couldn't like myself, and also the disgust on top of that of being like all the stuff that you're doing to preserve how you feel, that's also wrong because you're gross and you're disgusting. And then I would deal with that feeling with either the punishment of eat more, work out more, get stuck in that cycle, or give yourself as little as possible. And I was just stuck. It almost felt like a weird bug in a web that was like just kept alive, like inside the trap for way too long. And then you realize that you can actually just cut yourself out and be like, blah, blah, blah. But like, I couldn't make sense of that. So I would say my story started way younger than you. because I wasn't tall and lean as a dancer. I was the short power, I got quads. I was born with quads. I was like the dancer that didn't have long legs, and the ballet teacher was always telling me to lose weight actively. And I've always been a rebel with a cause. So when I was younger, I coped with it by just being like, fuck you guys. Like, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. Like, I'm fine as I am. I don't need to partake in this weird mental health shtick that you guys are trying to push on us. And as I got older, probably in that high school time, that's when I started to start to really bully myself into the physical component of it, but still pretending like I was cool like a cucumber on the outside. And when I was in it, it was weird because it only existed in the dance world that we were in. Because when I was at school, I was not seen that way. And I was not visual, like people looked at me and they'd be like, what are you talking about? But then the other environment, like from 4 p.m. onward, it was, you are a fat pig. And you better act like it, you little oink. But when I was at school, it was like, what are you talking about? And I think that cognitive dissonance for me, like trying to make sense of that, it was like I was putting on a costume to go out. So like my brain was always stuck between, am I or am I not? Is it or is it not? And that, I think that got me in this giant cycle, which when it came to the food component, I was more of a binger. I would say the biggest component of my out of controlness was the binging. And I would do it out of like, it was like I was trying to cause myself pain, but I didn't even recognize that I was trying to cause myself pain. But I was also sad that I couldn't stop doing what I was doing. And I was just sitting there crying. Like, I'll never forget, I was sitting there once eating popcorn. It was Chicago mix. And I was sitting there eating so much of it at the point where I got so sick because I couldn't stop eating it. And like, I was like, I don't understand. How come I can't stop? In retrospect, obviously it makes sense. There's that addiction cycle with the dopamine, and there's also the stomach signals being sent to your brain, which is like, yes, we need more food. That's a biological thing, right? But then when it's connected to the emotional component, it's very confusing for you to make sense of while you're in it. And then also being like in your teens, you don't really know what's happening. And I was surrounded, I really feel bad saying this out loud. I was surrounded in a home environment where it was always said to me, like, stop eating. You know, you don't want to do that. Why do you keep doing this to yourself? So like, I felt like a psych experiment growing up in this like weird thing. And then as I got older, it was all about there would be periods of time where there was binging, and then periods of time where there was restricting. Now, all throughout all of this, which we will obviously touch upon, is the movement stuff, which was, we're all taught, take less of what goes in and move more and everything will be fine. So we're like sitting there till 3 a.m. like on the treadmill, whatever. And I just wasn't able to separate the working out from like punishment or productivity or efficiency versus, I like working out because it's good for these things and it makes me feel good and it's healthy and it's this and it's that. And it feels right in my body. Like I'm getting out all my cortisol, right? But in my head, it was just punishment. So it was actually double cortisol. And it directly worked against the goals because then I was inflamed all the time and then would gain weight instead of doing anything. Just nothing was working, right? And I think I wish that that's what more people noticed and understood about the trap of the shame and the embarrassment and the coming down on yourself and the self-bullying and the negative self-talk and the self-esteem is like, it's all to get you to the goal that you want, which is to look better. But then the things that you're doing to look better are directly causing the causes and conditions to make you actually look worse. And you're sitting there on the hamster wheel being like, I got this, I can do this, until you step off of it, you actually walk the walk instead of talk the talk. That is when you can change, is when you're willing to give up that disgusting addiction of being, it's like, you've called it in the past cortisol addiction, but there's so many more hormones at play. But it's addictive behavior, right? You can't stop the cycle. And just like all other addictions, there's the behavioral component and there's like the leading up to, and then there's the craving. And then there's like the conversation you have in your head. Then there's the hiding from everyone and being like you were showing your friends that you did that. Oh, I would not tell people that I was going and doing these things. I wouldn't be like, hey, look at me eating all this food and like working out and doing this. I was like, I'm gonna do this in private because there's like if someone else saw, they'd know. They would know how sick I am. Which is it's crazy to look back on just at the contrast of who I am now and like how I was able to cut myself off from all that stuff. And it is doable. So if any of you are listening right now and you are stuck on this hamster wheel of just fuckery, and you're like, I can't stop eating the certain way, or I can't stop working out the certain way, and I can't stop attaching it to my self-worth. If you think that you can't get out of it, you actually have to take your hands, to put them off the wheel and tell someone else, tell me what to do. You have to let someone else intervene because you think you know how to fix this, but you are the problem, right? No one like tries to, let's say quitting drugs, quitting alcohol, quitting whatever you're addicted, gambling, whatever you're addicted to. You don't just look at yourself and go, I surely can handle this. I can handle myself and everything is going to be great. And all I have to do is one time and it's going to be good and I'm going to be done.
Yeah.
No.
So the first step is admitting that you have no power over the addiction. And that's such a poignant and profound thing to bring into food and exercise. It's sad and it's scary because movement is for health and movement is for life. And how many things do we read? It's like, move your body every day, get 9 hours of sleep. Like these are the things that are the formula for health and longevity. And so movement is important. And also we can't survive without food. So it's not this recovery process that happens with substance abstinence. We can't not eat. And though we've tried, there's like an interesting movement around like breath work. People go on water fasts and just survive on breath work. And it's
if you want to have that experience, just do psychedelics, guys. You don't have to starve yourself and breathe very hard.
I was like, how is this a thing? This is really scary and crazy, especially as someone that like, I have a really, a spiritual practice that has really helped me in a lot of my healing. So to see where things are moving really fucked up. I think
your voice just cut it a little bit, but it's fine. We heard you say fucked up, and that's the only thing that matters. So let's just take a moment to talk about some like terms, because when we say eating disorders, I think a lot of us think like, okay, if I'm not as bad as like being anorexic, or I'm not as bad as being bulimic and throwing up, then like I'm fine and I shouldn't work on this because I'm not as bad as someone else. That is legitimately as bad as saying, and I know we made the joke before I went live and pressed record, but that's like saying, oh well, I only had like kind of a medium trauma, so like it's not worth working on if I don't have like the big trauma. Like I didn't go to war, so like I shouldn't, it doesn't make sense. And then you realize that it's all the in-betweens that are causing the unhappiness and that are feeding into the anxiety and the depression, and that self-worth component. So we do have to pay a lot of attention to the term that you brought up earlier, which is the orthorexia. And that is defined as someone who is extremely restricted in what they are putting into their bodies, and very selective about it. And then also very particular about what they're doing as the output for their bodies. It's supposed to only talk about the food component because it would be an eating disorder in the DSM-5, but we have to bring in the exercise component because there's no such thing as one without the other. And like anyone that you meet who struggles with eating stuff, it's going to be like, yeah, I also have like a bad relationship with my body. And that's why I also do this thing. So I think that's the most important one to talk about because it goes super undetected. Obviously I went to naturopathic school. I was surrounded by people who were like, oh, well, I'm a vegan and I am a paleo and I am a vegetarian and I am a carnivore. It's like everyone's walking around with these masks of what they think is not orthorexia when it really is. It's these things are a lifestyle, and shit, if it's a lifestyle and you're not happy in it, that is now contributing to your mental health and the anxiety and the depression. Like if you love your lifestyle, if you're carnivore MD and you're like, I love it, I'm going in my ice bath and I'll eat, and like you never crave any fruit and you're just like super happy and living your life, great. However, when we start to let's say go keto, and we're like, well, I'm just keto, I'm not eating carbs, and that's what I'm doing. And it's like, well, what's the point of it? What's
Been
the point
there.
of it? And it's like, the point of it is for you to lose weight. You go into ketosis, you lose weight, you have more control, and you don't trust yourself around certain things. So you're taking an abstinence against a certain food that you demonize as bad. And I was caught in that as well for a long time. It wasn't called keto back then, and really it wasn't. I was just being like, I only eat vegetables and meat, and I would mask it as like, I have a fructose intolerance. Do you, Jenna? Do you? Is that how you're gonna play it for everyone? You're gonna say that you can't have that because it hurts your tummy or whatever. I do have a very bad digestive system, but it is way better with bread and cheese than it is with any other food. So my diet actually is 80% bread and cheese. And I work out way less than I ever did, if not minimally to nothing. I tried to do a yoga class today and it hurt to hold a plank. Okay. I don't work out that much. My body composition looks way healthier now than it did when I was eating meat and vegetables and working out every day. So there's gotta be something there. And I think only people on the other side can be like, we found the secret. You must stop. And it's like trying to convince an alcoholic that it's better on the other side when you're sober. Because when you're in it, you're like, I'd never give that up, because then I'd have to feel pain and I'd have to feel uncomfortable by myself and I have to feel shame. And what if I get fat? And what if I, this happens and that happens and that happens and that happens? It's like, okay, what if none of those things happen and you actually get what you want? That'd be wild. And that's what I'm sitting here and telling a lot of you.
Yeah, it's like the costume of health. Oh God, it's like the perfect excuse to stay in denial. Like I said, I had body dysmorphia forever. That was easy for me to say. I was like, oh, I can't trust my eyes. I look in the mirror, I don't know what I see. And we're talking like incremental, like 5-pound shifts, like that really probably weren't that visible to other people because I'm very tall. But to me, life or death. Like I'm talking life or death, which
What did
again
you do in that situation?
feeds into like the depression and the anxiety, right? So then
Yes.
the thing that I thought was going to help my mental health then became the cause. And then it was, to your point, actually now an addiction and a habit. And I deal with it more as a habit now. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm navigating it constantly, especially when I'm in a dance environment. But the habitual thing of binging food when I feel like an uncomfortable sensation, I'll just grab that handful of things. I wouldn't call it a big binge anymore, but like food as a number, food as a soother, food as a regulator, that
Mhm.
is a straight up habit. That is a straight up pathway in my brain.
Yeah.
That
And
is
let's talk about the science for a second, though, because when you go to grab something, what are you grabbing?
like generally,
Yeah.
yeah, a handful of popcorn, square of dark chocolate, something that's going to
To light
give
up
me a hit. Yeah.
yeah. So essentially,
Vegetables sometimes because they're
okay.
like
So you're like, you're like still like, you're like good, like you're like being a good girl in your head if you're like good or bad. Okay. So like I live in a world now where I eat whatever I want, because I made that my goal. I said, I want to be the girl who eats cookies. I want to actually have my cake and eat it too. And I figured out how to do it. Which made me extremely happy. And it's probably how I was able to get out of that disordered pattern.
Yeah.
But like we go for snacks, like let's say, I'm going to go with a cookie because I just like cookies. But we're looking for the quickest thing that's going to increase the level of serotonin in our brain. And it's sad because there's other ways to do it. Right. And I'm not saying don't grab the snack, eat when you want to eat, like do your thing. Obviously, none of you are doing that. If you're watching this, you're like, I can't. But we'll work on that. Don't worry. It's like there's other ways to get that dopamine and the serotonin party to start. And I think if we learned how to sit with what that was, like like I said, when I was younger, it was like I was getting the hit and it was hurting, but the pain felt good. Like my pain was pleasure. And I was just like, do, 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 do. And like I was unstoppable. Like it became rabid. Like if someone tried to stop me from eating, like if my mother came in and was like, are you done with that? I'd literally be like, like I was insane. And like for you to know that you have had that response or that you've gone through that or you've had the emotional impact of that and you're not working on it, you are doing yourself a serious disservice because it actually doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to have the addiction and you don't have to deal with the roller coaster of satiating yourself mentally and emotionally with the perfection of how you're eating. And I think that that is the challenging part. And like when I was saying to you, like the good girl versus bad girl, or if you're a dude watching and it's a good boy versus bad boy, I can't say that without thinking about my dog. But it's like we are categorizing good behaviors and healthy behaviors and bad behaviors and inhumane and wrong and disgusting and shameful. It's like we're only accepting ourselves when we're eating vegetables instead of sitting there like now to the every day I eat for lunch, mostly every day, a bagel and cream cheese. And I think I've talked to you about this before. Like I sit there and I'm actually thanking my bagel and cream cheese. Like I'm intentionally being like, I'm so happy I get to eat you. This is the most exciting part of my day. I am so, but to get there, like eating a bagel back in the day, I'd literally be like, I can't even describe the physiological sensation that was going on in my body and the shame cycle that was happening in my mind to eat a bagel.
Yeah.
A bagel. I wasn't sitting there eating a whole cake or like eating the whole ice cream tub, like just a straight bagel and cream cheese. Like
Yeah.
pretty much, if we look at that from a nutritious standpoint, that's what you feed your children. That's what I was fed my whole life.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I got to the point where I'm like, you're bad, Jenna. You can't eat that. And it,
And the more you say no, the more you want it. And then
yeah,
you
because the
keep
craving,
it,
the
like
craving of the addiction.
and then we lose. I mean, for me it was so slippery because then my body's cues got really 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 fucked up. Like I still have times where I recognize like, ooh, I'm so disembodied with my cueing of when I'm hungry and when I'm full, and that's when I'm falling back into a coping mechanism and I'm like, oh, okay, what am I trying to bypass? What emotion am I not dealing with right now? Okay, it's time to look at some other things. It's time to talk to the therapist. It's time to like, because I'm filling the void. I'm filling the nothingness. I'm filling my existential crisis with something that's perfectly distracting. Like, how much can I control my food and exercise? When that's what your life is about, there's no space and no room for you to worry about anything else.
Yeah,
So it's
because
perfect. It
yeah,
was,
it's like survival
oh my
stuff.
God, it
It,
was the perfect distraction for all of my trauma and
yeah.
all my other shit I didn't want to deal with. And
Yeah.
I just quickly want to say, I didn't actually say out loud, I have an eating disorder until just over probably about a year and a half ago.
Oh my God.
It was always body dysmorphia,
Yeah.
eating problems,
Yeah.
control issues, but to actually, I went to a support group about eating disorders and I spoke out loud in front of people and said, I have an eating disorder. And I bawled my eyes out
It's
and
so ridiculous, eh? When you
it
like think about it.
released, it released the pressure cooker of hiding it. Like I just want to really point out like the beauty of you saying we need to stop pretending we don't have this as a problem in a culture, especially North American culture where dieting is celebrated. It's eating disorders. And when we can just out that shadowy, shamey thing and stop pretending it's something that it's not, like stop pretending that, yeah, it's something it's not, that opened me up to start to get free of it. Like to not put band-aids on it, to actually be like, this is a disorder that, and again, language is super powerful. So not to like bog down with this is a disorder and you have a problem. It's not that. It actually freed me to
Well, I
be like,
mean, no, you kind of do. You have it like
I,
not you, but like if you have a
yes.
disorder and it's a problem, and it's like the second that you look at it and go, "Oh, problem. Oh, there's a solution to that problem." It's like do the steps and work on it.
Well,
Why
I
suffer?
was just going to say, and it's the exact same as the 12 steps of recovery. Like those are the steps I work through with my eating. I surrender to the fact that I have no control over the way I behave with food and exercise some days. It's something I'm reprogramming in my brain. And there's, as you say, there's emotional, there's the chemical, there's the brain. Like this is a full holistic situation here. Like
There's so much stuff I wanted to say while you were talking, and now I'm like, don't even know where to go. You said so much.
outing it, and
Oh yeah. Okay. The outing it thing is funny because we're sitting there like locking this down, being like, no one knows. And it's like, okay, I want you all to imagine this. Anyone who's listening right now and anyone who listens to this replay, okay? If you're thinking about this in your head about yourself, that means that you're using that bias to analyze everyone around you all the time about what they're eating and how they're working out and what they're doing and how they're treating their body. You can't help but bring your bias to the table. Now imagine how many people in the room at one time are actually struggling with this extremely common thing, which is not feeling good about their body and recognizing that exercise and food have to do with a lot of it. Obviously, genetics play a component, but other people are preoccupied on this. That means that they're all watching you. Do you think that those people aren't noticing that you ordered a salad to the table? Do you think those people aren't noticing that you didn't eat the chips at the party? You think those people aren't noticing that you're just having your vodka with soda with a little lime spritz? You think that they're not noticing? It's like you're hiding in plain sight, but everyone around you knows. Everyone around you knows what's going on in your head based on what's going on in their head. And obviously they're coloring the experience. But it's funny because I've had all of these thoughts. And when I go around and I'm with people, I always want to say to them, like tap them on the shoulder, it's okay. It's okay that you go through this. It's like, you don't have to hide it from me. I go through it too. But I'm going to sit here and intentionally pour that entire Coke into my cup and drink it because I'm working on my shit. Right. And it's like, you can, in honesty and in vulnerability, I think that there is the comfort of knowing that other people struggle with what you struggle with. And I think the craziest thing about this condition, like, yeah, anxiety, depression, great. But when it's tied to food and exercise and body image, you think about it the moment that you're awake. You think about it the first thing you go downstairs into the kitchen. It's the first thing you think about when you put on your fucking clothes. It's the first thing that you think about every single time you're around someone else, because now you're interacting in a physical space. It's the first thing you think about when you're at a social event. It's the first thing you think about when you are in the fucking shower. Okay? And I hope all these things are landing with you guys, because every single time that you do a basic human thing, this is what's going on in your mind. It's an entire cycle, a conversation that's happening every millisecond of every day of I'm not good enough, I don't like myself, and I don't feel comfortable inside my skin. And there is nothing more anxiety inducing and depressing than having that thought cycle go through your fucking head every single second of every single day. I have the chills on my arms right now thinking about it. Like sleeping naked, being in front of someone else naked. Like you think about all these things, and like these are the things that make you human. And you don't feel comfortable inside your skin, and you're telling me this isn't at the top of your list of shit that you want to work on for yourself. You're going to tell me that, oh, it's because you're anxious about, other things, and oh, I just have depression. So that it's no, there's things here happening that you have to work through that are beyond chemical and beyond treatment, and you have to take it seriously. And I think that the part that was always extra scary for me was when these thoughts started infiltrating my brain. Do you remember when you used to let's say you go back in the day to when you were dieting, and you would wake up from like a nightmare, and the nightmare would be that you like broke your diet or that you ate something you weren't supposed to eat, or like, you guys don't understand. Your subconscious is your nervous system is downloading this shit all day. And you want to sleep well? You want to have a good relationship with someone? You want to feel at peace when you're sitting on your couch watching TV? It's like you can't do any of those things until you repair this toxic relationship that you have with yourself. And the reason that I got chills before is because like I fucking went through it, and I don't go through it anymore. And like I had this conversation today with someone. I'm like, I'm so excited to go into this chat tonight with it's like the inspiration or the motivation that I want to share with you, that there is another side where this isn't going to be occupying all of your brain space if you make the commitment to that. this is an insidious addiction. It's really scary when you look at it that way. And we're all just trying to like bop around on this planet and like find happiness, but like none of us want to like peel back this weird curtain of like, this is what I go through. This is what's on my mind most of the time. It fucking tortures me and it's affecting every single part of my being.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's like, I feel emotional and grateful for you sharing like your passion about that and the vulnerability around it. And it is why we're passionate and we want to have this conversation, because it is a prison. It is not life. And there are days when I am still very much in the grips of it, being very much in the dance world, where the worth feels so aesthetic. And it is absolutely debilitating. And you're exactly right. You can't escape from it. The moment you wake up, how about the times where I don't have a shower because I can't be naked with myself? Still happens. And I'm like, okay, but I got to just be with that. Like, I'm not going to pretend that that's not what's happening. And it's really interesting, because what came up for me when you were talking there too was the eating disorder was a symptom potentially of some of my depression and anxiety and a coping mechanism, and now it is the catalyst. So
It's just
it
a
has
connecting
now
point.
become the main event around the times when I am struggling and feeling low and depressed or anxious. Often I got to look back and be like, ooh, it's back. Like, hey, she's back. Like, all right, get her out of the driver's seat. What's happening here? And it is truly a prison, and it is masked and costumed in so many ways. And the fitness industry and even the one that gets me now, and I fall into this trap so many times, is like, diets don't work. And you pointed this out before, as long as it's a lifestyle. But if your lifestyle is not in alignment with who you are, how you want to show up, the things you want to eat, the way that you can sustain it till forever, till you pass this life and come back in another one, it's not healthy for you. And everyone's looks different. Every single person's looks different. So I'm not shaming fitness people, and if that works for them and they want to count calories for the rest of their lives, I honestly convinced myself that I could do that. I was like, that's going to be the way. Perfect. I figured it out. It's not a diet for me. I can do this as a lifestyle. It is so tiring. My adrenals were so out of control. Like, no, you burn out, you crash, and then you you take the vacation, you come back, you get stuck in the same loop again. It's like, let's just be honest. Let's be really fucking honest and transparent about what's happening here. And I just, so that we don't keep like, I don't keep looping on the same thing. What was your like first? So for me, it was definitely like outing it and saying it out loud. I have an eating disorder. That helped me really start to catch the loop, because I was finding like little band-aids. It was going okay, but like still so exhausted. What was your journey of like admittance and then actionable tiny steps that helped you to start to shift, especially because you are in like such a better place and like super grounded in this now? I'm like super interested.
I would say okay. I'm a person of self-reflection. So I think that the environment that I was in, of watching all these unhappy, sick people around me convincing themselves that they were doing these things, and they were like trying to tell me like, that's just who I am. That's just who I am. And I think I had a moment where I was like, I'm doing the same thing over and over again, and I'm not getting the results that I want. So I think that what's happening is I haven't found the thing that's working for me. And I gave up this stubbornness. And first it started with exercise. And I think that that's when I told you that I was like, I'm a big, I don't want to say, it's not all or nothing. I just like to do things like, and I was like, okay, I have a disease. I have a sickness. I'm addicted to working out, and I'm going to challenge myself to not do it for a long period of time and see what that brings up in me, so that I can deal with the actual mental cycle of what's happening there. Because you can't separate the two, right? It's like, when you're an alcoholic and you're going to your step meetings, I don't know, because I'm not an alcoholic, I don't drink, but if you do that, isn't there like a time where you can't like go out with your friends, or like someone says, do you want to go to that? And you're saying no. So I was like, oh, okay, I need to say no to working out. I need to say no when someone asks me to do something that's like, and I made like some weird arbitrary rules, like never get your heart rate above this, never sweat, never this, unless it's like a passive sweating in a hot yoga room as like, very minimal movement. And I made this weird rule with myself so that I could see. And what I noticed when I did that was everything else just started to, it was like everything started to fall into place. I was like, oh, okay. So when I do that and I eat like this still, I don't gain weight. It was like I had to disprove myself in these different places. But the only way that I got there is because I was willing to do the thing. And I always tell people this, all my patients, if there's one thing that you're holding on to for dear life, like your attachment is dependent on it, your entire self-esteem, the way that you see yourself, and if that's the one thing, what happens when we let it go? And you have to be willing to detach. You have to be willing to do it for the sake of finding out. And if you're too stubborn to do that, it is very challenging to get to a place on my side where I can actually say, I'm fucking free. Like, I am free. Working out means nothing, has no connection to how I'm eating, has no connection to my mood, has nothing. And like, for me to say that, I actually can't even conceptualize how I got here. But I got here because I was willing to start somewhere, and I was willing to start at the stickiest place. Give up the hardest thing. Okay. Like if you guys are having difficulty with, it's so hard to say because everyone's different, but let's say it's like, I can't bring in unhealthy foods. It's like, make the unhealthy food that you're so afraid of your meal. Like, force yourself to do the thing you're afraid of so that you can prove to yourself that that's not actually the monster. You the fucking monster. You're the one that's causing the mental narrative behind everything. I don't get to talk about this so much, which is why I'm so passionate and like rapping and yelling at you. I'm like Eminem being like the monster under my bed. I'm like, yeah, that's what it is. You have to be willing to be so scared. You have to be willing to be so vulnerable to grow. Don't we know that? Isn't it scary to jump off a cliff? No one wants to do it, but we sure as fuck want to feel what it's like to actually be like, woo, and know what it feels like to crash into the water, right? We all have to do that very scary thing. And when you realize that the scary thing really isn't scary at all, there is so much space on the other side. Like, I couldn't even describe to you how much time I started having in my days. And I was like, oh my God, my brain's free. My space is free. I don't have to work out. I don't have to do that. I don't have to prepare that food. And I don't have to, it's like, I suddenly had space. And then I had all the space to start working on my actual self and my mental space. And then everything was just like, it was so easy. It was so easy. And now I can embody that little rebellious self that I was when I was a kid, being like, I'm going to eat the pizza. I don't care. Or like that's who I am inside. It's what I want. So my goal was never, it was never, get to my fitness goals and be this certain weight, and do that, and then work out this much and have a 6-pack. Like, that was never on my mind. The only goal that I had at this point was, I want to look good and eat whatever the fuck I want. And it sounds so ridiculous because I think everyone, if they're honest with themselves, that is what they want.
Mhm.
I think everyone wants to just be happy and work out for enjoyment or move to feel good. And I work on that in my program so much. We only move in ways that actually feels right and good. And we assess how we feel before, how we feel after, how our mood is affected by it. Like, when I was bringing exercise back into my life, which was so hard because you are falling back into an addiction again, right? An alcoholic being like, I'm going to start drinking again. It's like, how do you cap that to just one drink a week? It's like, well, you better have a damn good plan in place. So when I was bringing exercise back in, it was like, okay, you only get 20 minutes once a week for a month. But then you get to graduate. Then if you want more, you can do 20 minutes for 2 months. But we have to now assess how we feel. And there were times where I would feel so exhausted after doing that workout that I was like, my body didn't want that. I didn't even need it. I go for a stroll. People always say to me, walking's not exercise. And I'm like, think again.
In that voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super powerful. It's so true. I was actually having this conversation with a client earlier today about when we've swung the pendulum, like often the high achieving perfectionist, intense, absolute personalities
Yeah.
love to. It's not so hard to be like, okay, I take my hands totally off the wheel. I surrender it all. Fuck it. I'm gonna eat the cake. I'm gonna do the intuitive thing. I'm never gonna work out again. I did a bit of that during COVID too, and it felt really good. Like you say, dive into the fire. Like move into the thing that you think is scary. Notice how much your worth is wrapped up into it. That's where freedom lives. That's where freedom lies. And I think when you say most people just want to be able to eat the food and look good, most people, we just want freedom. Whatever freedom looks like for you.
Yeah.
If freedom has a little bit more restriction because your the way you want to look is like so important for you for the rest of this lifetime, and that you want to like be just a little bit more discerning around your food, but that feels like freedom for you, power to you, love it. But are you like healthy and whole and coming from that like
Yeah. You
deeply
have to be
grounded,
rooted in the alignment.
authentic place? Exactly. But we were having this conversation about once you swing so far and you take it all off the table and then you want to try to dabble and bring it back in, we talked about exactly this. I said we practiced that other pattern. We practiced that addiction. Whatever you practice is what you get good at. We practiced it for 20 some odd years. And so how quickly and easily do you think it's going to be to go vroom, and you pull your car into the fast lane and you're like, I'm going to go to spinning on Monday, I'm going to go to cinema on Tuesday, I'm going to blah, 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 blah. As soon as I get spare time, that creeps back in. My schedule is like there's a workout every day, and I love moving my body. I fucking love it. I love trying new things. I like sweating. I like feeling a burn. But it is a slippery slope, and I think
Yeah.
checking in with yourself before, during, and after is such a beautiful process and such an important like tool of I was really excited to do this workout. Then I did it. I pushed my stress levels too hard. Now I feel completely depleted for the whole day. So next time, what really was the check-in before? What part of me really wanted to do that workout? And instead of a
Exactly.
run, could it have been a walk?
Yep. And
Instead of
that's, I know that I'm not trustworthy. And
I,
that's what I recognize from the beginning is like,
that's
whatever you
powerful.
like, yeah, like whatever you think and feel, like it doesn't matter, Jenna. Cause like I posted today again, facts are facts, feelings are fucked. Okay. I have to look at the facts. The facts are I'm not trustworthy when it comes to working out. I am going to get addicted. I was my whole life. So even if I want that extra workout, I look at myself and I go, you already hit your capita this week. That's it. That's all you get.
So
Per day
right.
thing too. I don't get to do per day. If I go on a walk, that's it. I don't get to do another. Even if I, you know, maybe I go through something really intense mentally and emotionally, it's like, okay, that I recognize that was what I experienced that day. There is no cycling that day. I only get a walk. And maybe if I walked and something still happened in my body that I need to release, it's like, okay, you get to shake. And that's
Yeah.
all you get. I've
You did
I've
some breath work,
allotted,
you
yeah.
shake.
So I've
Yeah.
allotted it's like you live the life of an addict for the rest of your life. You put the rules in place and you follow them. And you recognize that when you start to get happy up here, you are not trustworthy. Right? Like the main thing that I wanted to say when you were talking, which when you were talking about your client and like how you start working back into it and like loving yourself and all that kind of shit. I always say hate saying loving myself, but I'm about to say something really cheesy right now. Not until the last bunch of years that I've been working on this have I been able to look in the mirror and actually see myself as I am. Like I actually, there's a part of me that goes, you look really good. You know, you you have no reason to look good because in my head I'm like, because you don't work out and you don't eat well and blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, good for you. You know, like you got what you wanted. You look better. Your body composition changed, and it does. Guys, I don't even know if anything changed. I don't know if I weigh the same because God knows I don't weigh myself. I don't know if I weigh the same. I don't know if I look different. I've never had someone reflect back to me being like, "Wow, you look so different." Like none of that. It's not even physical. There's something different that's happening when you start to let go. That there is a moment where you actually look at yourself and you go,
I like what I've done here, because your nervous system is hearing the respect that you have. Your nervous system is feeling the freedom. It's such a odd concept because you can't see it. But how is everything changing? It's like when you meet someone and they help you see the light. And then you're like, the world was still the same that it was yesterday as it is today, but everything that I see is different. And it's
Oh,
like, you can't, I can't make this shit up. I wish I could. But like, it's when you commit to actually doing this with the proper intention, with the alignment, that is actually on the other side for you. And it's not like, I don't look at myself being like, yeah, I could lose 5 pounds. Like, sure, we could all say that. What's it going to give me?
that's right. It's like checking in with the intention of the why. And as you say, like we project, we create our own reality in every facet, and we create the reflection that we see in the mirror. And it's like, because you got your stress levels under control and the inflammation went down, and like the good chemical, you were wiring and firing different thoughts that were creating different feelings, and then suddenly the reflection literally shifted in your mind's eye. I recently have had the same thing, like being in a workout class wearing tight clothes. I used to always have to wear like a baggy t-shirt, and being like, nice, I don't know why. Or like sitting on the couch right now, I'm sitting on the couch right now in bike shorts and I'm not holding my stomach muscles.
Oh my God.
i'm just
Yeah.
I'm just letting it, right? That's a
Yeah.
scary one.
You
And
know
that's
what
a very
changed
real
that?
one.
The weird thing that changed that for me is I got a pool in my backyard. I'm naked all
Yeah.
the time.
In my bathing suit, I'm feeling okay. And the one other thing I just wanted to add it that I was having a conversation with someone about also is like, because I am in this field of work that has like certain things that make it easier, healthier, more accessible when I'm strong, and when I'm being mindful of what I'm putting in my body. Like I have major digestion issues also. And so if there's a certain amount of discipline I need around dairy products, or I am going to have the worst stomach ache in a 9 a.m. ballet class. And like, you know what I mean? But how can that discipline be nourishing, like be divine? Like for I don't
Wait,
want
are
to
you
get
asking? Are you asking? Because I'm
no,
ready. I'm
it's
like
like
ready to answer.
yeah. I want to like riff off of this because this is the question. This is what I am working on right now. This is my personal project and I'm loving it. It's like, how can that discipline be divine? How can that intention be really pure and not coming from this, like, well, you got to lose weight or you're going to lose the job? Like, I don't feel any of that shit anymore. But it is like, I can get carried away with it very easily. But when I just check in with that intention of like the seasons of my body, and like, if you have a goal, it's not a bad thing. It's sketchy and slippery when you have an eating disorder.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how is my discipline a
Mm-hmm.
divine thing connected to my soul and my greater purpose, and like figuring out what it means to like have a sacred push, like a sacred intensity, and then to also be able to like let that go when I need to, and not be like, I can never have rules ever again because I'm an addict. I'm not there yet because I still have
Okay.
things in my life that I want that require the
Yeah.
discipline.
It's
And so
also hard because like in your situation, you want to like pull back just enough that it's perfect instead of pull back and deconstruct and then re-add, because in your head, you're also trying to be efficient at the same time because you're like, I can't waste any time. What if I make a mistake when that happens? So it's like you're trying to do the perfect recipe without really knowing what the conclusion is. And
totally
you're, yeah.
like
Yeah,
experiment.
I totally understand that. So for me, what I do, and I've also infused this in a piece of my method. So when people do module 5, they're doing nutrition for mental health. And I've created, think of it like the Canadian food guide, right? They have like a picture and they'll be like, this is how much we want on your plate. And this is here and this is there. And the way that I present it for eating for your brain, is it's all about adding. You're going to choose what falls under each category. These are the foods that are falling under these different categories. And this is how you're going to create a complete meal for your brain. And I deconstruct and I teach it that way so that you're not feeling guilty for
Mm.
adding in the cookie. You're not feeling guilty for adding in the cheese. You're not feeling guilty for you are actually, you have to meet it as a checkpoint. You get to decide from which category what's being met in that checkpoint because it's required. So that's how I did it for myself. That's how I break it down. And that way your intention of eating isn't just for this. It's for this. And like, it's the intention of how you're eating. And like when you said intensity, I always say to people, like, if you're a high achiever, you're a perfectionist, we don't want to take the intensity away from you because we can't change you. You bring that everywhere you go. That's just the way it is. But if I can morph where your intensity is going and say, okay, I want you to be really intense about picking things from each category. It's like, oh, I can do that. And everyone can take their strength and their weakness, however we want to call it, and use it to their advantage. And I think that that's where high achievers lose it the most, is there's just all or nothing and black and white. Diet starts on Monday, or you eat a bad lunch and you're like, now I'm just going to eat like shit tonight. It's like none of that. It cognitively actually makes sense in reality. It's all a construct of how you're thinking in your brain. Instead of saying like, let's say you go out for brunch with your friends and you have French toast because you're like, I really love French toast and I'm out and I'm social and it's fun and I just really want that. And then it's like at dinner, it's like, okay, we got a lot of those nutrients that I needed from that. Where else can I pack the nutrients from that I'm actually requiring and needing right now? Because that, if we just split it into two, that would have been 2 healthy portions, let alone even the singular one is a healthy portion. But the way that our brains work, it isn't so. But it's like, how do we start using math to our advantage? How do we use breakdowns to our advantage? How do we change where we're putting our intensity so that the outcome, we don't feel like we're failing. We feel like we're actually winning every single time we do it. And that's like, it's psychology's trick of the mind. And I did it on myself and I do it for my patients, and it changes the relationship that you have with food. But you have to be willing to do the things. You can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm going to change my relationship and then not fucking do it. And then be like, oh, well, now I'm going to keep it more a secret because like I'm too ashamed. It's like, just shut up and do it. Because if you do it, and I tell people this with meditation, breath work, yoga, movement, whatever it is, I'm like, if you just do it, something's going to happen on the other side. We don't know what it is, but are you willing to find out? What if it's really good?
Mm-hmm.
What if the result is really good on the other side? Like, just give it a shot. And I've worked with people in the program who have had eating disorders. I've worked with people who had body dysmorphia. And I've worked with people who came to me and said, okay, I don't identify with any of those things, but like, I definitely have a bad relationship with my body, and how I bully myself and how I talk to myself. And most of the people that I've worked with, with the intention that they've gone into it with, they've messaged me. And I hope that one of my patients will listen to this after, because I don't see her in here live right now. But she was like, I don't know what happened, but like my body's changed. Like, I'm wearing jeans from 10 years ago that I didn't even do anything. I wasn't trying to do that. Right. And it's like, well, when you start to settle into yourself and settle into your skin and actually work on your mental health, these things just start flowing. And like, does it happen to everyone all the time? It's like, no, sometimes we have underlying stuff that's happening, and maybe you have a hormonal dysfunction, and maybe there's something that needs balancing in your blood sugar. And it's like, okay, there's so many things, but this is possible. And it's very possible for people who have been stuck in that restrictive, like, eat the certain way to be the certain way so that I feel better about myself, and also move in this way because I need to feel good about myself. And that's what makes me look this way. So it's those people in those cycles, I've seen really, really good growth with them working in all these different pillars. So
yeah. And it can be that simple too, but it is trial and error, because the old thing will creep in, and then we just go, hey, nice to see you, I forgive you, I get it, we practice.
I have
this
one
way.
patient who talks like that too.
Yeah,
You give an alter ego name.
It's like internal family systems, right?
Yeah.
IFS, it's a very powerful form of therapy, I find. Especially if you're kind of like a visual kinesthetic learner, like you can see it, you can feel it. Like I can feel my passenger. I'm like, whoa, God, okay, hey girl, get over here. and it's like we just notice the pattern, and then we go, yeah. But I love how you said we don't see it as a fail, we see it as a fucking win. And you go, I got a win. I got another win on me. You know, as a win, French toast for breakfast. You know, it's going to be another win. A little bit of greens on my plate at dinner. Boom. Like it's cool, and we can be playful with it, and it doesn't need to be like, oh, there is just this, there's like a darkness and an intensity around it.
That's
And
the perfectionism.
that is the perfectionism. And I also think there's like an admittance that we talked about and a deep, deep acceptance that this is just going to be on your back probably for as long as you're here in this human experience.
Yeah.
this
So,
time.
so like, why suffer with it though?
Because
Right.
society is spewing it at us everywhere you look, every step you take, every move you make, every breath you, whatever the song is. It's like
scary. It's like my demon's coming out. It's like, I'm watching you.
it's literally everywhere. And so we're swimming a bit upstream, but it doesn't need to be, like you say, it doesn't need to be suffering. And like, and just reading in the chat here, somebody said a lot of times it feels like a trap. Some days I can eat, other days I can't. It's like I'm not hungry because I get a stomach ache, or you don't eat other than one time a day because it seems like a lot of food. And like, I totally hear you, I totally see you, I totally am you. But that's also because we've trained our bodies away from the natural cues, and we've controlled these amounts that like our stomach doesn't even know where its natural fucking size is.
Yeah.
And that's when clients come back to you and they're like, oh, my like happy weight, my set point has changed, my body composition has changed. Oh, because you just actually started eating when you were hungry.
Yeah.
Like,
I have a forced time to eat. I have a forced time. So if I'm not hungry by a certain time, I look at myself and I go, doesn't matter, babe. Get it in. Open up the hatchet.
Yeah, no, I actually am kind of working with that myself right now. I hit a big adrenal fatigue. We talked about this last time I was chatting with you, from a number of things, and super stress related. Also was just like working a lot, dancing a lot. It's natural, professional athletes, like this happens. But then you add some personal stuff on top and yada yada. And the first thing was like, yo, check your eating disorder. What's happening here? Oh, you're having only fruit for breakfast. You're spiking those levels, like your blood sugar's going to. So now I've been trying, now that I have time off and my schedule is free, it's like, no, we have a balanced breakfast at 8 a.m. Kelly. We do. Even if you wake up feeling bloated, even if you haven't gone to the bathroom, even this, like putting that rule in place. And that to me is that like divine discipline. That's not like, it can easily slip into more controlling category. Easily, we know. But for me, it feels good. It feels juicy. Oh, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to make my oats. I'm going to put a little fruit in that. I'm going to drizzle that almond butter. I'm like, this is beautiful. This is a practice of fucking love. Like, let's get back to that place where I can be excited about this, not obsessed with the control. And again, it like looks at
and
looks
scared.
everyone. What's that?
You can't be scared of your food and scared of your workouts, guys. Like you
know.
can't be afraid. Like that you have to be in the rest and digest phase when you're eating. And when you're working out, you're already going to be in fight or flight. So you have to like read the room.
Yeah.
Your nervous system it's like read the room. You have to do what's right.
Yeah. It's so amazing. I don't know if anyone else listening, and maybe if you're watching the replay and whatever, what is happening to my nervous system while we're having this conversation is like, it's quite profound. Like when we first started talking about it, like I could feel the activation because you're reliving and you're going back there. And now like I'm entering into rest and digest. I'm getting hungry right now. And I feel so good sharing these things and just like out, like being honest with ourselves. And my body already feels better just talking about it. Like that's how powerful this is.
Yeah. Like I like that I'm at the place where like I ate dinner before I sat on this call, you know, that like I can trust that my body is going to be in that place that I need it to be. So that when it's just crazy. There's a lot of like, I have a lot of gratitude, for how much this used to rule my life and how now it doesn't even, I hear the voice sometimes faintly in the background, but it's so little that I actually get to turn around and go, huh.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. And like, I do encourage people when I work with them to talk to that thing, like give it a name, have the conversation, have the interaction, you negotiate with yourself. Why do I really want to do this right now? What's it trying? What am I trying to do with the thing that I'm doing? And if you don't know, you don't have the right to do it. if you don't have a clear answer, you don't have the right to do it. It's like you have to treat yourself in these situations as like you are an untrustworthy toddler. You don't know better. And the person that has the wheel is a scary gremlin and they're trying to ruin your life. And you need to look at the driver and be like, nobody permitted this. And if that person was driving a car, your straight ass face would not get in that car. You would not get in that car, all of you listening right now. You wouldn't be like, yeah, you know what? That looks like an inviting Uber driver. I'm going to get in and I'm going to take that ride. Like, there's no way. So, like, look at yourself objectively and be like, all right, I got some shit to work through. I'm going to do the work. And the hope is that when you do the work, that there's actual peace on the other side of this. Cause like, I am a living proof. I never thought that I was going to be here. I thought I was going to get stuck in that cycle for the rest of time and would always have to be thinking about that, working on it, feeling bad about myself, feeling fat forever when like objectively I'm not a fat person. Like I thought that I was going to be stuck in this place of like never liking my skin, and constantly being surrounded by people saying, why, what's the problem? But you're this, but you're that, but you're this. It's like, it doesn't matter what you think.
Yeah.
I just thought that I was going to
You're
be stuck.
gaslighting me.
Yeah. I thought I was going to be stuck in that forever. And I'm really, that's the thing that I want all of you to walk away with is it is doable for you as long as you are willing to put the mirror up and look at yourself and say, okay, I'm ready to tackle what this is. I don't know what this beast is, but I'm not consenting to this type of behavior anymore because it's not making you happy. And it's taking away from the other happiness that you can experience. It's taking happiness away from you in relationship. It's taking away from you with your kids. It's taking away from you when you go out socially. It's taking away from the quiet moments that you have with yourself. And it's just not, it's not fair if you don't work on it, because it is going to continuously aggravate the anxiety and the depression, or the anxiety and depression is going to continually aggravate it. And you are never going to get outside of that cycle if you don't take the step forward. I get that it's scary. I've worked with lots of people on this, and everyone has a different shit. I've had to confiscate things from people before, being like, you will not do this any longer if you're serious about recovery. Yeah. And like, that's just the way it is. And I think that the big gap is for the, at the beginning when I said anorexia and bulimia, and it's like, yeah, those are deathly mental health conditions. Like you're not fucking around in that territory. Like you got to work on it. But there's just this insidious self-hate that's happening. And it's so connected to every fiber of our being. And you can't just say, I'm going to love myself. You can't toxic positivity your way out of this shit. Like you got to buckle up and be like, okay, I'm going to fix a lot of shit right now. And stuff's going to come up, and you pick a safe person to work on it with, because shit is going to come up. Right. And you got to be held accountable, and you can't lie, and you got to be honest, and like honest with yourself, but honest with someone else is like massive. Open yourself up to someone else. Let them see you. People can help you. And like, I'm an asshole who did it myself. Why did I wait so long? I don't know, but like,
well, it's a human condition. We're not really in the business as humans and walking egos to be preventative about these things.
Walking egos.
Like we're in the business of hitting rock bottom and only doing something once we've suffered enough, right? That's kind of the story. Everyone has actually the exact same story. Everyone wants to get free, feels not enough, uses all the coping things until they hit their version of a rock bottom, and then we reach out, and it's great, and we all share that likeness. But like two things that you said that were just so powerful. One, I am so afraid of feeling fat forever. That is literally the medicine. I am so scared of feeling disgusting and like feeling this way every day for the rest of my life, because it steals my joy. The amount of vacations, the amount of social events, the amount of every single day things that I bypassed because I was only stressing about what I was eating and when I would work out on a rooftop in Greece. 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 I had great moments.
I did the same shit.
Yeah. Oh, it like ruined, projected onto partners, like, and I'm grateful for every moment of it because it was my journey and it's led me to where I am. But the fact that I can now like enjoy vacations, wear a bathing suit, breathe into it, it's like it is worth it. And it is everywhere. Everyone struggles with it. Like, honestly, it's so sad. It's so pervasive. It's super fucking problematic. And that's why we need to have this conversation as many times, many
Yeah,
times.
I could have 100 more conversations about this. I feel like I didn't even brush the surface on the amount of shit that I actually went through because we only have so much time. And I want to check in with you because I know
Yeah,
you
sure.
said you were leaving. You wanted to leave at a certain time. Do I get to steal more of your time?
I do have more time because
Okay.
I made a mistake and I thought you said Tuesday, but it's Monday and I'm good.
Okay. So I do want to talk about some natural medicines because obviously I'm a naturopathic doctor. People come to me for treatment and I work on this stuff all the time. So in conventional medicine, what we see a lot with this stuff is people come in with the anxiety and the depression, right? So they get the treatment of the anti-anxiety medication or the antidepressants because they're like, oh, no one's going to. How many of you have actually gone to the doctor and been like, I have anxiety and depression, and these are the things I'm experiencing, physical. And then someone looks at you and goes, so how are you struggling with how you actually feel about yourself and how you're eating and how much you're working out and also how you feel inside your own skin? No one's asking you that. So they're like, here's the antidepressant, here's the anti-anxiety for whatever they're giving it to you for. And then there's lots of studies out there that will be like, oh, well, people that have these medical conditions, so anorexia and bulimia, they've done their research and they're like, oh, it's got to be the serotonin. And it's also overlapping with these mental health disorders. So it's got to be the serotonin. And it also has to do with this personality disorder. So it's got to be, the serotonin. We just put so much emphasis on the medical component of it. And because of that, there's been really good research in natural medicines. So when I work with people, we'll work with like rhodiola, saffron. We'll do St. John's wort sometimes if there's that mood component. We have things like tryptophan, which will help with, but neurochemical pathways and B6. There's a lot of research on zinc for anorexia because it helps people build an appetite back. And then in the research, people who had deficiencies of zinc were also showing up with anorexia, which again, it doesn't even make sense that we can look at it in that lens because it all plays a freaking picture, right? So like, I like when I work with people to say, okay, we're going to de-intensify the anxiety and the depression component because it is that cycle that's looping in. So I'll use plant medicines that are helpful in the research for anxiety and depression and eating disorders. But we also have to do the behavioral stuff. Like my cognitive behavioral techniques are way more in the forefront than let's also do this treatment to de-intensify the feelings of what's happening, because there is no amount. Like you can smoke as much weed as you want and you're not going to feel good inside your own skin. Your skin just won't exist anymore, right? You can do as much microdosing as you want. You're not going to suddenly just fix your relationship with food and exercise and yourself. And there's so much of that out there. Like I'm like a huge psychedelic researcher, and the information I grab and people will be like, oh yeah, if you microdose, this will happen. It's like, no, like what it does is it's changing the brain landscape so that you have the opportunities to have creative thought, for these concepts to be changed, for these mindsets to be shifted, not because we put something into our brain and we're like, oh, that was the chemical imbalance, I am now fixed. It's not that simple. And
it's not like you get to extract this new thought and implant it in your brain. There's just an opening and an availability. But if you're not doing the work to actually repattern and to decide what the new pattern is, ain't nothing going to change.
Yeah. And I always say that to people, if your anxiety or your depression medication worked for you, because like obviously there's a lot of people in the world who take it and they're like, I feel great because of it. It's like, was it really anxiety and depression that you were working through, or was it situational stress that this has allowed to numb so that you moved past it and now you feel fine? If you are someone who has anxiety and depression, you very well know that it's not just something that's tinkering on the surface all the time. Like that shit runs deep. The way that you think, the way you feel, the way you process, the way, like the experiences you've had as a child, the relationships you've had that have formed you throughout your life, like everything plays such an important role. There is no natural or conventional medication that you can slap on that and go, have a nice life. it just doesn't exist. And if it worked for you, you're not listening to this. You wouldn't even be in my community if it worked for you. So like there's people out there that you'll never know that are on medications because they are just like out there fine being like, oh yeah, everyone should take a Xanny. It's like, or you were a little stressed and you took it and you felt better, but you actually don't struggle with a mental health disorder that is pervasive throughout your body and your existence. And that's why I always stress to people, like it's you have to do every part of the picture. It's so nuanced, and we can use things to help. And in this situation, I would way rather someone play around with plant medicines to help with their mental health as they do the behavioral stuff than just go on a medication hoping that it's going to fix something and then, just leaving it there. I would rather do this, especially when it comes to this weird, insidious mental state of perfectionists who need to like look a certain way and be a certain way. And, I would rather not say to you, okay, well, you're sick and you're fucked, so you should take medication. I'd rather be like, let's work on the stress response. Let's work on behavioral stuff. Let's work on lifestyle stuff. And I will also help you out in these categories in a gentler, more empowering way. Yeah.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah, I myself, like when depression first crept in and sort of became totally paralyzing and debilitating for me, I took Cipralex for 8 months, which was a medically prescribed Western tablet. And I'm so sensitive in every sense of the word that I was only on half of a pill for a very long time. And then I was like, I don't feel good again because my body started to get used to it. And my doctor said, go up to 1.5. I went up to 1.5. No. And luckily I was attuned and in tune enough with my body that I realized very quickly that was not the route that I wanted to go. And the numbing and again, like, to each their own. I feel really grateful that I had the discernment and the wherewithal to kind of feel from a feeling place that doesn't align with me. And I was doing talk therapy, CBT, along with using this medication. And so I decided to wean off the medication because I felt so unlike myself. I was having lucid dreams. I was sweating like a banshee. Like the second I stepped into a dance class, like all these symptoms, I was like, hey, I don't want this. And I also was scared of being addicted to some kind of drug that was not me. And that is what allowed me to continue doing therapy and then finding all of these other modalities that have supported me and that I truly, truly believe in. And that it's not a one size fits all and it's not a one thing. It's a few things, and you dabble and you try and then when you're ready, you go back to family of origin and trauma and you do all the things and you can unpack it and peel the layers off versus just, as you say, the one diagnosis of one word with one small pill, and we're just gonna band-aid this and move through that moment in time and forget it ever happened because it'll always come back.
Yeah. And as you talk about modalities, I can confidently say that the only reason and the only way that I was ever able to view myself as I am and be honest with myself without letting the other narratives cloud me is because I was practicing meditation. Like, you can't see yourself without it. You can't gain the fifth voice in your head, the one that comes with reason. You have to be able to go through these different styles of treatment for yourself. You have to be able to get scared and to stay committed and to do the things so that you give yourself the opportunity to shift your perspective. That's all it takes. And I know I said that earlier, but I will say it again. We all need to do the things that allow us to see things differently. And meditation was a huge thing for me for that. Yoga was the thing that challenged me, that made me sit with the shit because I had to deal with those feelings and not letting them creep in with a boundary when I was practicing something physical. But I was able to see it through meditation, and then I was able to live it through the yoga.
Nice.
So yeah. Can I open up the floor for Q&A? Does anyone have questions? Because we've been talking for a long time.
There's one thing we can do. It's talk about these things we're passionate about.
I will give you guys a hot second if you do want to send something in. We already addressed the other ones in the chat, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's tough because like me and you were just talking about our stories. So we're not really able to like hit the nail on the head for everyone. And I recognize that when we're talking is we have a similar experience. And not everyone has that. Some people are like anxious and they can't eat, or their depression makes them really, really hungry. It's like there's always going to be so many different experiences, but I feel like this conversation was just very relevant to have. Brianna's asking, how many times a day should you eat? Well, I don't know how to answer this with a black and white answer. If you're someone who gets hungry in the morning, then you should be doing breakfast, lunch, dinner. If you're someone who's not hungry in the morning and you're super nauseous and you feel like shit until about 11 or 12, then you should start eating at that point. I think the beauty about doing this work is you have to find out what makes you tick, and then you have to find out what works for you. Right? Like for me, I like eating 2 really big meals, and then I also love a good midday snack. That's just I love eating junk. Like it feels like a cookie, a sour key. Like I'm a happy camper. Like I need that. And I will actually not go for fruit or not go for vegetables when I want a snack, because I'm like, I want that sour key. And I want it to go down strong, and I don't want it muddled with anything else. Or like, I'll be like, I want only chocolate right now. And I give into that very freely. So I would say, yeah, from a health standpoint, depending on what type of blood sugar situation you're working through and what goals you're trying to achieve, 3 times a day is pretty solid. And if you get hungry for snacks in between, that's pretty solid. If you have gastrointestinal stuff, like I have very bad gastrointestinal stuff, I try and wait until I actually have participated in gastric emptying in the morning, because I have to do that in order for me to be able to like leave my house. Okay. But everyone's individual. And when I work with people in my program, even though I have a way of eating, it still has to make sense for the way that your body likes to eat. Chris, yeah.
The digestion thing is like a highly sensitive person thing also. I mean, it's obviously stress related, and you probably know the science behind it more, but it's just like the gastrointestinal stuff and the food sensitivities, and like the question even that's in the chat, like dietary changes and like
I haven't even read it yet. I'm going to get there.
I'm like, it's just really interesting that we both have a similar situation with that. And just to speak to that, the question of how many times a day, often like if you're dealing with a blood sugar thing or an adrenal thing, you want to eat within an hour of waking. And I have compassion for if your digestion, if you have a slow transit time and you still wake up after 12 hours of fasting and you're not hungry because you haven't made a bowel movement, it's really hard to eat within an hour of waking, but it's like trial and error.
Yeah.
Like the 3 meals a day, I can totally get behind. I think it's important for like our brain health and our.
I'm less of a amount throughout the day and more of like the day is your bank account. Spend it wisely, right? And then like because timing is, if you're really going to be an intuitive eater, then you should really focus on feeling, and go with the flow. Okay, I want to read this. I know for me, one of the tough things has been going through those ongoing necessitate. Can you give me the proofread on that one? Dietary changes, like necessary dietary changes, allergies, and reflecting on the orthorexia nature of it, but also the medical need. What kind of allergies? I actually did leave a note that I wanted to talk about how we hide our shit. So like, like fructose intolerance,
sugar intolerance,
doofus.
Everyone's gluten-free and things.
So like what kind of intolerance are we referring to? And is there a way to help you eat those foods where, it can be hacked on the naturopathic or the supplement side of things to allow you to eat the food or repair the gut lining, whatever's causing the sensitivity, versus telling you can't eat something, right? Because like, I can eat whatever I want. I've learned that I'm very sensitive to garlic. So I will try and limit the amount of garlic, but I'm not going to not eat something because it has garlic in it if I really want it. Like if I'm going to the keg, I'm sure as heck eating everything that's on the table. Lactose from birth. celiac, and then additional allergies that have popped up due to hives, SIBO, you name it. Is someone working on your gut with you?
Gut health. Yeah.
What?
Gut health.
Is
Getting
someone, yeah? Okay. So, I mean, we should definitely have a private conversation about this so that I don't we don't give your information to everyone. But like, you know, dealing with lactose, fine, that's doable. Celiac, fine, that's doable because it's an actual medical condition. But as long as your intention, like you have an actual allergy that you can't eat something, why would you put yourself in a position to engage with that? Because that would just create pain. Like my best friend can't eat avocados because she gets a big tummy ache. So she like won't eat sushi with avocado in it. It gets popped out. That's not eating disordered behavior. That's self-preservation. But
I
the
think that's
SIBO, yeah.
aligned with like the piece of having divine discipline because it's for your higher good and for the benefit of your
Yeah.
freedom and like wholeness and feeling good. It gets slippery when we start using it as an excuse versus like, no, I feel like shit when I
Yeah.
eat gluten, which is my truth. My truth is I feel like shit when I eat gluten.
I feel
can't
so
do my
good.
job.
I feel so good when I eat gluten and dairy. I'm like on
You're
cloud
thriving.
9. It's so weird. But like that's why I don't fit into the box of like healthy. It's like, what did you eat for dinner? Pizza. What did you have for lunch? A bagel and cream cheese. So you've only had bread and cheese today? I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And I feel
Good.
great.
And when you're in tune with your own body, you know what feeling good feels like.
Yeah. So here, I don't have a desire to eat things I'm allergic to, but I have a background in binge and I've just had to adjust a whole bunch else. Okay. So, I mean, when you say the histamine level, that can be also worked on without cutting out foods. I have a very sensitive histamine body response. And I actually do natural treatment for that so that my body's not reacting 24/7. Otherwise, I would have itchy skin, itchy eyes, itchy throat, itchy everything. I even get it when I sweat. So like I get exercise-induced histamine release.
The mental
So yeah. Yeah. So I would say like the plan just has to be sensitive to you. But you can also eat whatever you want and not eat the things that offend you. Like I don't feel restricted that I can't eat garlic.
I
I
love how
just
you say things that offend you. It's such good language.
yeah.
Will.
I want to open up the Q&A because there's two. Okay. No, those I answered those.
I think the mental part too, and maybe this resonates, is like if you have a background in binging or that's still a thing that you can slip into, it's like what are you depriving yourself of
I
those
actually
other areas?
when I do it, which is rare now, but when I do it, has anyone ever used the tool thought stopping? When you're noticing yourself ruminating and then you go, nope, and then you replace it with something else. I actually thought stop when I'm binging. So I'll catch what I'm doing. I'll notice the speed or the pace at which I'm doing it. And if I'm not even tasting the food anymore or how much is actually going into my hand. And then I do thought stopping because it's gonna make me sick. I don't even get to the point where I have a shameful spiral about it. I just go, no. But that's the thing is when you work on something consistently over and over and over again, the mental component or the narrative that's used to happening, when you practice it, it stops happening because you're like, oh, I've committed to stopping that thought process and replacing this and then doing that. So that's just,
Yeah. And that's again when it's like it's moved from an emotional response of potentially like filling a void or escapism or something or avoidance, and it's now become a habit. So that's when we can really get like playful with the thought part of it. I love being like, okay, Kelly, we're not doing that right now. Like can actually reparent myself in the act of
Yeah.
grabbing a handful of chocolate chips, going back for another handful and being like, nope, we used to do that. This used to be a thing we did. We don't do that anymore.
I don't even, I can't even describe to you. I'm remembering when I used to do that and it doesn't even occur to me anymore. Like I'm never even, because I haven't deprived myself, I'm not even reaching for it anymore because it's
So
not an off limit thing. And that's the thing is like, when you're a kid, think about it. If your parents like, don't go in that room, you're going to be like, I want to go in the room. I want to go in the room. And if you just say to yourself, you can have it if you want it, over time, it's going to lose its power. And I think that all needs to be worked in a specific fashion where you're committing to working on that thing. We can't just like, you're not leaving this call tonight and being like, okay, I'm going to radically change everything that I do and everything's going to be fine. And I accept how I eat and I'm never going to care. This is not how it works. This was not an overnight situation.
And sometimes in the first stages of combating some of those habits, those habitual behaviors, we have to replace it with something else. Like if you read the book Atomic Habits, he talks about the actual process of changing a habit. And there are versions and times where we actually just need to replace it with something else. So it's like if you're so used to going to the fridge again at that time and going back for the thing, you still go to the fridge, you grab a bubbly water. You grab a bubbly water, you grab a bubbly, like whatever it is. That's just an example. Maybe it's a poor example, but like you chew on a piece of gum, or it's like you have to do it slowly, and it's a process of undoing. You can't just be like, no, I don't eat after 7 p.m. ever again.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that probably won't work.
Because it's all or nothing. It's also so hard as I self-reflect now looking back. Your environment makes a ginormous impact on how you engage with addictive behaviors. And it's why people who are addicts will, change where they're living because it's a part of the step process, or they will change relationships, or they will it's just your environment makes a huge difference. And I have noticed that my engagement with exercise, movement, body shaming, and eating has changed dramatically since I've moved into this house. And it's not always about it's about patterns, right? It's like some people are like, I don't have enough willpower. Like my couch is directly in line with the eye vision of my fridge. It's not like it's not like it's out of sight, out of mind. It's in a different room. I'm in a new house and I have more willpower. It's like the pattern that my body was used to in the last place that I was living, which was a majority of my life. It was too difficult to get outside of the patterns of behavior. I mean, there is a good saying, wherever you go, there you are. But, there is something to be said about the space and the environment that you're in and the people that are in it with you that are contributing to certain things. But yeah, we could have an entire other conversation about that. Do we have any other questions coming in? Anything about this at all? About your story, about our story, about stuff that you're working through. It can be anything. If you can't think of it right now, or you're like, shit, I don't want to have that in writing on here, then that is perfectly fine. You can always send me a message after and we can chat. But I do, again, want to reiterate that if you're listening to this, this is now something in your sphere that you need to work on. You now know it's here. You've at least, I hope, had the moment where you've listened to this live where you're like, oh, okay, they both admitted it. Like they went through that and they're working on it and they're doing this, that you're like, okay, it's okay to admit it too. No one's judging me for it. No one loves me less for it. No one thinks I'm disgusting for it, or that I'm an attention seeking person for it. It's like you have something and it's taking up a giant space inside your soul. And it's time to work on it, because if you don't, you will be carrying that shadow like frickin' shackles for a very long time, and you're going to get tired. And there's a lot more abundance and opportunity for space when you let go of the things that you are only holding yourself to. No one else is holding you there. Okay. So we will park it there for tonight.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Nobody else is holding you there. It's so true.
I hope that you all have a very insightful evening after this conversation.
Yes.
If you are listening to this after in the replay, feel free to reach out to me at any point so that we can chat about this. And if you are someone who is serious about working on this and you're ready to make moves, again, you know where to find me and us, because Kelly is also in the Facebook group. All right.
I'm just putting my information in the box right here too. If you have any specific
grab it.
At K22 Shaw on Instagram.
I'll still tag you in the Facebook group.
Or you can email me, kelly.shaw22@gmail.com for anyone.
Kelly.
Yes. Happy to.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. To many more.
I love it. I love having you. It's so good. We always get so excited when we talk about stuff, and it's so good. So yeah, let's park it there. I'm feeling fatigued.
Me
Okay.
too. I'm actually gonna have a nap. I'm in Hawaii and it's only 4:39 and I'm gonna have a nap. I was thinking,
I'm gonna go to sleep.
I was like, I'm gonna go for a nice walk after I'm online. But do you know what? My body doesn't want to walk right now. It wants to close my eyes and have a nap. So
Do you
that's
mind maybe watching the sunset for me? That would be great. I would love to engage with that through your eyes. Okay.
sending everyone lots of sunshine.
All right. Peace out, everyone. Have a lovely night.